Hey everyone, welcome back to Pine Hollow out of Diagnostics. Back to the 2010 Chevy Cobalt with the welding accident. I talked to the owner and basically told him what I found so far and what it would take to restore this car. Luckily, it's not a BMW and it's a common car, so used modules are readily available on eBay or wherever. So ballpark estimate, by the time all the modules are replaced and programmed, about $1,000. So he talked it over with his boss and she wasn't happy. She's like, just get rid of it. But he's like, you know, in this market you can't really find a good used car for under like $2,000 probably, or if you do, it'll probably need a lot of work. So he said, you know what, let's restore this thing. I'll get a few more years out of it. So that's where we are. As you can see, I drove it into the shop. It barely made it up the little hill in limp mode, but it's here. It still has a parasitic draw. We still need to do some diagnostics on, is the engine computer bad or is the throttle body bad? And also this power steering is offline, has no power steering. So I want to finish up the diagnosis and then go on eBay and go on a shopping spree for all these modules. Let's start with the power steering. So in the power steering, we just wanted basic checks, powers and grounds. We know this module is offline. And we know the communication wires are good because it's a pass-through for the high-speed CAN. So we have a big power and ground. It's a 2-pin connector. This is a high current device. And then we have this 6-pin connector with the high speed in and out. And then the pink wire is ignition voltage. So we want to check the ignition voltage, and there's the motor control and these main powers and grounds. So let's do that right now with a bright test light. Alright, here's a test light combo. Let's check this ignition power. I just have it on the 1 amp setting, and the ground is on the main ground right there. So I turn the key on. Yep, that checks out. Now let's connect the 5 amp setting, so basically 4 plus 1, and check the main power right here. Yep, so it definitely needs a new power steering control module. Now I think the module you can replace separately from the whole power steering unit, you know, meaning the motor and taking the steering column off. The customer obviously said save as much money as possible, eliminate anything that we don't need. He said don't touch the airbags. So he just wants the car to run, drive, stop. And he did say he wants the radio and the blower to work. So you know, that's going to be extra, but we're going to start with the drivability stuff. Alright, moving on to this throttle body. We have absolutely no action, so I unplugged it, and I expect to see a code for TPS sensors and the actual motor control circuit. Let's see what codes are set. So in the ECM we have, throttle position sensor low voltage and sensor 2 high voltage. I expect that. CKP system variation not learned, minimal throttle position not learned, lost communication with transmission control module. I don't see a code for the actual circuit, you know, the throttle body motor. That tells me that this engine computer is not doing what it should with the electronic throttle. It came and set a code for it, so how can it control it? We can check the resistance on the throttle body motor itself. I'm sure that will be okay. So it looks like a bad ECM. This is the replacement ECM that the owner got from eBay that was refurbished. So unfortunately, he'll have to get a refund for that, and we'll get a known good used one, and that's my preference. You know, get one from like a salvage car. Don't get a reman unit, because who knows what they did when they opened it up. Just get a a used one, but that hasn't been opened up, and you can program to the car. Should work fine. Other codes stored right now. Remember, the battery was completely dead. I have the charger on it currently. All this airbag stuff, and I did see, let's see here, in the BCM, let's see, come on, radio, supplemental restraints, there's this B1000 code, electronic control unit ECU performance. I don't like that. Is it possible that the airbag module also got cooked and is causing a parasitic drop? Very possible. The VCIM, if you remember, under the seat, we basically removed it from the high-speed can. It's still on the low-speed can, and it's also setting electronic control unit performance. Could that be because of low voltage? Perhaps. But, you know, this parasitic draw, we can't really diagnose it until we replace all the known bad modules. I guess we could disconnect all the modules, see if the parasitic draw goes away, but it's hard to do a parasitic draw test when there's so many variables here. So I'm going to chip away at this car. We know we need at least a TCM, ABS module, power steering control module, ECM, because the throttle body is not being controlled. So that's already 4 modules that we need to install and program. I'm going to disable the VCIM completely, like remove the fuse to it if it has a dedicated fuse, or just unplug it back there to get that out of the picture. Unplug the airbag module. That's what the customer wants. Now some shops might be like, hey, we're not touching this car unless you want it to be, you know, perfect, because liability stuff, but the owner will sign a waiver that, you know, we just leave the airbags alone. It says service airbag light. We'll put it on the work order, but you do have to cover your ass. In the airbag module, again, it's not happy. I'm just gonna try a couple things. Nothing to lose really. Test completed. Let's see, read fault code. So invalid serial data from left impact sensor, right impact sensor, passenger presence system, electronic control unit performance, device ignition 1 circuit short to ground, device power 1 circuit voltage below threshold. I mean, this module here potentially is completely wasted. So we should find it and just disconnect it and see if a parasitic draw goes away. We've got the battery charger at 13.5 volts. The battery's almost fully charged, about 4 amps going in. We're in the trunk. I just want to see if we can do a preliminary check for this parasitic draw. So let's, all the cables are easy to access, so let's go to our negative cable, re-zero the amp clamp. Looks like we have a 2 amp draw. That's pretty substantial. Now from the positive here, there's a fat cable that goes to the front, and then there's this other cable that goes through a 50 amp mega fuse. So let's measure right here again, re-zero the amp clamp. Yep, there's our 2 amps. Now is it going to here? 0.4, okay. Or to here, about 1.7. Almost 2 amps. So where does this 50 amp fuse go? Let's look at a power distribution diagram. Alright, power distribution diagram. Here's our battery. So the fat cable goes to the starter motor and the alternator. That makes sense. And the other one goes through this inline 50 amp fuse, like we saw, to the body control module. So if we click on the body control module, here's the input, main power feed from the 50 amp fuse, and then it goes to everywhere. So in this case, I think it would be cool to try out thermal camera, the TOPDON TC View. Let's play around with it and see if we can spot anything abnormal. So starting from the battery, just focus in on the camera. So you see the battery's kind of warm, it's being charged. There's our ground cable. Let's go right to the BCM. They already have it out. Let me see anything interesting. Well, I don't see any fuses jumping out at me. Now that bright dot, that's just the hold down bolt. So that'll kind of glow on its own, and then there's this little spot right there, that's the little bolt holding down the connector. It looks like there might be a warm spot on the side of it. But if you look at the dash, I mean, the car is cold, as sitting here for hours. Why is there heat coming out of the vents? I mean, it says that it's over 70 degrees Fahrenheit at the vents, and in the garage it's maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The radio seems to be glowing, like the little USB port there. So I think the heat from the radio, if it's drawing, might be coming up and emanating from the vents. And we know the radio says locked. We couldn't read any of the numbers through it, you know, the VIN or calibration numbers. So even though we don't see any hot fuses here, let's look up the power distribution for the radio circuit and measure the voltage drop on those fuses, unplug them, and see if our draw goes away. So for the radio navigation system schematics, we have the UQ4 RPO. So there's just one power feed, the RDO fuse 23 in the BCM. If we keep scrolling down, we also have this U2K RPO, which is the digital radio receiver, and that is fed by fuse 24 XM OnStar. Again, just one power feed. And the OnStar system, again, only has one power feed, fuse 24 in the BCM. So let's check fuse 23 and 24 for a voltage drop, and if they have a voltage drop, then we can disconnect them and then see if the draw goes away. Alright, we're at the BCM. Fuse 23 and 24 are the upper left row. So let's see here. On the thermal camera, we didn't see anything here. There you go. 4.2 millivolts. Steady. Fuse 24. .8 millivolts steady. So there is draw on both of those fuses. In here, I'm just checking one fuse for comparison. That's no draw. So fuse 23, 4.0 millivolts, and then fuse 24 was 1.8 millivolts. So this fuse 24 feeds digital radio receiver and OnStar, and then fuse 23 feeds the radio and the remote door lock receiver, which that's too bad, because if we pull it, then the door locks won't work. So we might have to get in here and just disconnect the radio. See how hard that is to get out. Or we can just pull the fuse for now and measure the parasitic drop. Alright, so we're starting at 1.7 amps. let's pull fuse. Oh, I'm going to start with 24. Disable the OnStar stuff. Okay. We're down to 1.4. And let's disable the radio. Zero 0.4. So we're not quite done. That's still way too high. Dang. Where else could this current be going? We can measure the other fuses on the BCM. Actually, before doing that, let's just unplug the main 50 amp fuse going to the BCM. It should be pretty easy right here. Or just pull this fuse out. Let's see what our parasitic rod went down to. Hmm, 0.7. So what else is on there? You would think the draw would go down. Well, one thing I didn't notice is this fat cable does go to the under hood fuse block. And then from there, it goes everywhere else. Okay. Wow. Oh, this sucks. So in cases like this, the diagnostics time is just hours and hours and hours because everything is potentially compromised. So, So, half an amp going to the underhood fuse block. So under the hood, the only fuse that I found that had any voltage drop was this little 10 amp, and that was at 2.5 millivolts. Let's do that right there, 2.5 millivolts, and that is the SDM. What is the SDM? Is it the airbag module? Bingo! It is the airbag module. SDM fuse, 10 amp fuse block under hood. That's the battery positive feed. And then the ignition power feed comes from airbag fuse 13 in the BCM. So basically, let's pull the SDM fuse and then see what our parasitic draw is. So we're at 0.47. Come over here. Pull this little 10 amp. $94 milliamps. That's still too high. But that was most of it. Interesting. Oh, this is pretty crazy. Alright, so I plugged the mega fuse for the BCM back in. I pushed the door switch closed. So that's closed. We're at 144 milliamps. So plugging in the BCM raised the parasitic draw from 82 up to 144. That's a rise of 60 milliamps. I went through all the fuses here, and this 10 amp, which is number 27, interior light 10 amp. If you pull that out, we're down to 82 milliamps. So still not perfect, but at least we know what in the BCM is causing an extra 60 milliamp draw. Are we further along? Well, yes, we're collecting data, but we still need to figure out where this 82 milliamps is going. Well, after 20 minutes, the car actually went to sleep, 6 milliamps, so whatever that was, we're asleep. That's awesome. Okay, no more parasitic draw. What can we plug back in? Can we plug in the interior lights? Okay, we're still at 6 milliamps. Good. So that was fuse 27, interior light. So we're in good shape on the parasitic draw. The radio and the remote controlled door lock receiver, I'm sure the radio is shot. And the VCIM, that's most likely shot. We don't need OnStar, so let's leave the VCIM unplugged completely. That would be the OnStar stuff. So now we can start replacing the necessary modules and not worry about the parasitic draw anymore. So for the blower motor complaint, I noticed that 30 HVAC relay was not swapped over. Alright, so let's put this in. Plug the battery in and make sure the blower motor works. Alright, let's try this. Yay. That works. AC. Recirc. Alright. Cool. So next step, we're going to buy the subscription to General Motors Programming, SPS2, and try to reprogram this radio. If that doesn't work, we're going to have to take it out and unplug it so the door locks still work, and we're going to repeat the parasitic draw measurement and see, you know, does he need a new radio? My guess is yes. On TechLine Connect, we're into the vehicle, recognize it through the Bosch MasterTech pass-through. So let's go into SPS2 and see if we can reprogram this radio. It's worth a shot since we're paying for the subscription anyways to reprogram the other 4 or 5 modules. So reprogram next. And we're going to go for radio. Audio system. So which one do we have here? Let me just double check which RPO code that we have. So we have the UQ4 RPO, radio with bass speakers. Let's see what happens here. Yes, it'll take one of the VIN slots. So I don't know, 50-50. We can talk to the radio. It has a parasitic draw. It says locked. So did it get zapped? Validating controller. Select the radio part number as read with a Tech 2 under Diagnostics in a drop-down list menu. No, this is not digital radio receiver. That refers to the XM receiver. So we didn't have the radio ID because that got, the brain got fried. So I'm just gonna pick one. So got the radio pulled out. There's the GM part number. We can try to program it by that part number, just to see what happens. But worst case scenario, we'll just unplug it and get rid of our parasitic draw, get our door locks back, and go from there. Alright, so now we're going to choose 208-35360 instead of the first one. So we need to take a print screen of this. And now we're going to go next. We select with UQ4 speakers. Yep. So we're going to try it. You're attempting to reprogram with the same calibration. Current selected. So from somewhere it got, whoa, the current calibration, I'm just going to try it anyways. Locked. So this time it just went like instantly, and nothing's really going to change. Still locked, and the side of the radio is burning hot. I mean, I can't keep my hand on there, so this thing's toast. We're just going to unplug it and let it be for now. So I got the Tech 2 working here, just checking module part numbers. That's the BCM. If we try the radio, it's just gonna spaz out here. Meh. Possible wrong vehicle selected. So let's see, remote control, door lock receiver. Yep, everything's there. Instrument panel cluster. It's there. There's the engine control module. Calibration IDs. Yep. So that's that. In module setup, there is radio setup available. And you can try all day long to set up the radio. It's not going to work. UQ4. Loss of communications with vehicle. So, yeah, this radio's toast. Alright, we got 7 milliamps on the parasitic draw with the radio unplugged and the fuse is in, so the door locks work. The remote works fine. So basically, disable the airbags, disable the OnStar, unplug the radio, no more parasitic draws, and now we can go shopping on eBay to get the transmission controller, power steering control module, ABS control module, and the last thing I want to look up is on the ECM, in the trouble code description, it should be able to set a code for circuit, motor circuit through the throttle body. if it doesn't set that code and the throttle body is unplugged, something's obviously wrong with the engine controller. Alright, let's put the scope on these two throttle body control wires, brown and yellow. So channel 1 is on brown, channel 2 is on the yellow. It's according to our wiring diagram right here. There's the throttle control motor, pins A and B, brown and yellow wires. So on the scope, when we turn the key on, this thing should activate. Let's see if anything happens at all. Alright, here we go. Wow. 8 volts. Let me put the charger back on this thing. Oops, I still had my in-series ammeter connected. No damage done there. Fuse is okay. Let's try again. Alright, key on. So we saw 12 volts. Oh, let's see here. So the red and the blue traces were right on top of each other. Does that mean we have an open wire? Well, easy thing to do is unplug the throttle body and see if only one trace goes high, not both. So let me save this. We'll try again. Alright, so now I have the throttle body unplugged. I'm not even sure it's going to attempt to control the throttle body. So I'll take key on again. Okay. What did we see? The blue trace went high and the red trace stayed low. Interesting. Okay, let me save that. Alright, so on the engine control module, on connector X2, we're looking for pins 16 and 32. Those go to the throttle motor. Now, the connector view, pins 16 and 32 should be right next to this big pin, pin 73. Let's go find that. So here's connector, this is X1, that's not the one we're after. This is X2. So pins 16 and 32 are going to be right there. What I noticed, visual inspection, is, I don't know if you guys can see that. You see that pin? The upper pin, pin 16, is just bent and smashed into the connector there. That's why we have no continuity through, to that driver. Right there. Boom. So I'm going to try to straighten that out. Let's take this computer out of here. But if it breaks off, then it's not going to be a good situation. We'll need another engine computer. Alright, time for some surgery. I'm going to try get this pin back up. That's going to be not easy. I'm going to try a little bigger pick. Just gently Try to massage that sucker up. So I want to squeeze it with some really fine needle nose pliers to straighten it out instead of bending it at the base. Alright, after some very gentle straightening, that pin right there looks pretty much as good as new. I'm surprised how bendable these are and forgiving. So pick, tweezers, needle nose pliers, just be really gentle and careful straightening pins on modules. But let's plug this in. Our throttle should be back in action. Alright, moment of truth. ECM's plugged in, throttle body's plugged in. Let's look at our scope. Nice. We got control. No more reduced engine power. That's awesome. Love it. So let's exercise the gas pedal. Amazing. One less module to replace. That no parts required fix on the ECM. Alright, so I think we're finally done with the diagnostics on the Cobalt. We fixed the reduced engine power, bent pin on the ECM on the first eBay ECM, so we salvaged that. Don't have to buy another ECM. So all it needs now is a TCM, EBCM, the ABS module, and the power steering control module. No more parasitic draws. HVAC system works. Needs a radiator because the old one got damaged and is leaking. And airbags and radio are unplugged or disabled. So I think the owner will be pleased once the car is actually running, but won't be able to run it very long with the busted radiator. So the crankshaft relearn he'll have to do himself after he installs his own radiator. So in part 3 we'll get all the new modules on here, program them with the SPS2, and send this thing back to the customer.